Welcome to this ZBrush tutorial. What I want to show you in this tutorial is basically how to create an object for us to sculpt on. So what we can do is, with ZBrush open now, if you have the light box showing down the bottom, you can easily turn it off here or turn it on there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go to the basic objects over here by the tools palette. We're going to click once and we're going to select the sphere. We're just going to drag this on the canvas and then we're going to go straight into edit mode. If you don't go straight into edit mode and you do this, you need to press Ctrl N on the keyboard, hold the control key and press N, then click and drag, yeah, and then go straight into edit mode. Now with this in edit mode, we might be thinking, well, we can use one of the brushes up here, and here are all the brushes that we have access to. We've got it on the standard brush at the moment with dots, but if I paint on this, you'll see that it says, to enable sculpting, please convert this 3D primitive to a Polymesh 3D, and that is because this is a primitive, so it means under the initialization settings down here we can change certain features of this primitive shape. So we can add more detail or take more detail away. If I turn the polyframe on here, you can see I can actually reduce the amount or increase the amount of subdivision levels on both the horizontal and the vertical axis. So when you're happy with this and you want to start sculpting on it, what you can do then is come up to the tools and go make Polymesh 3D. Now as soon as you've done that, you will have the ability to sculpt on the surface. So let me show you some of the brush sizes. When you pick a brush from up here, I have a custom shelf set up down here which you might not have, but if you want to select a brush, you can come up to here. You can also press B on the keyboard, and then if you know the name of the brush, such as the rake tool, you can press R and it will give you the tool that you wanted. Okay, so if I want the standard brush, for instance, I would press B and then S. Oh, I press B and then the S, and that would give me all of the ones in the S, and then I would pick T, or I would click on here and it would bring me back to the standard brush. Now to change the size and the fall off of the brushes, and we'll talk about this in a minute, you can press the space bar. So if you press the space bar, you'll get a little box come up. It'll allow you to change color, increase the draw size, yeah, or the diameter of the brush, and the focal shift is the fall off, so how soft it is. So a fall off of -100 is a really hard edge, but as you move it, it becomes a softer transition between the outer circle and the inner circle. The Z intensity is how strong that effect is on the object, yeah? So this would be 0, it will have no effect on the object when I click and drag. But if I turn this up to 100, this will be maximum effect. Okay, so you've got a Z intensity, really important that. So I'll set this back down to about 28, and I can just drag that across the object, and you can see it moves it out. Now you probably noticed the mesh is, or this mesh is not very detailed, so I'm not getting a very good sculpt there. Now with ZBrush, it's really important that when you're modeling things, you start from a really basic mesh, you get the overall shape, then you add more detail into that mesh, and then you start refining that shape until you finish with a high resolution mesh that has got a lot of detail into it. Now how do we get the detail into the mesh? Well, we subdivide it. If you look at these squares, every time I do a subdivision, each of these squares or these quads will become 4. So it times it in a factor of 4. So very quickly we can put resolution into the mesh, but also the file size or the polygon size of each of these squares will times by a factor of 4. Okay, so let us divide this and let me show you. I'm going to come into the subtools here, into the geometry here, and we're just going to do a subdivision. Now remember that we cannot subdivide and we cannot sculpt on something that isn't a Polymesh 3D. So if you get an error come up, you need to make sure that it's a Polymesh 3D. So I'm going to divide this, and you'll see on the model that it will get smoother like that. And if I turn this polyframe off and on, you can now see that I've got subdivisions. Okay, so it's more detail. Let's go up one more time to 3 and then put the Polymesh on, and you can see it's subdivided it again. So turn that off now and let us now sculpt on it using the standard brush. Now you can see we have a lot more detail, and if I press the space bar and bring the draw size down, I can do fairly fine things, but it's still not that smooth. So I would divide again and again. Now there will be a maximum point where you can't divide anymore, and that's based on your system. So now I've got it on factor 5. You can see I've got these lovely smooth lines going on as I click and drag with the brush. Now also, if you press the Alt key while dragging, it will invert the selection, so it will push in instead of push out. And this is common for all of the different brush types that you could pick. If I go into something like the rake brush and I rake the surface, if I press the Alt key now, it will drag in. So the Alt key while on a brush will invert that action. Okay, so to sum up here, I've shown you that you need to create the basic object, then you need to make it Polymesh 3D, and then to get the detail in the model, you need to increase the subdivision levels as you go up with the detail. So you'd start with a very basic mesh that you would move to the right shape, then you would put detail in till you cannot put any more detail in that you require, then you would go up a subdivision level, add more detail, and so on and so on. Now this is just using the subdivision levels on an object that we've got in here, but there are other methods we can use. We can also use something that's called Dynamesh, and I'll be talking about that in another lesson. But before I finish with this lesson, I just want to show you some of the problems that you might have whilst using this. Now, because the mesh has only got a certain amount of polygons, and we can divide them up, but then we'll run out of memory, you have to be careful. If I drop this down to, say, 3, and I just delete the higher subdivision levels, we're just going to go into move now. So I'm going to go to the brush and just going to select the move tool. Okay, just one of these move tools, something like this. I'm going to drag this size up, and I'm going to pull part of this out. So I'm dragging this out. Now, do you see the mesh getting really kind of broken up? Now that's because the polygons are stretched. Look at them, they're really stretched. So you can divide them up and it becomes a bit smoother, and you could use the smooth brush as well, which we haven't looked at. So to smooth your geometry, you can press the Shift key and it will smooth it. Again, you see up here, this is the intensity of the smooth brush. So with the Shift key selected, you can smooth this out a little bit, but we've still got this pulling. You can see these lines, and if I then have it at this, and then I could divide again and it would become smoother. But if I then stretched it again, you'd still get this thing going on. So you have to be quite careful, because even though I'm at a high subdivision level, it's gone, the polygons are all stretched. Now we can avoid that by actually getting our basic shape correct at the beginning, and also using another method. Now I'll be showing you another method that we can use to avoid this kind of thing happening. We use a method called dynameshing, where we can dynamesh this and basically get it, stretch things, and then get the geometry to look at it and evenly distribute those polygons over the surface to make it all nice and smooth again. We can also import a mesh from another 3D application as a base mesh and use that and add detail onto that, so we can avoid this problem happening while we're actually modeling inside of a ZBrush. So check out my dynameshing video to have a look at that, to just see how it works, and just bear in mind these points that I've given you during this lesson. Welcome to UKOnlineTrainingCentre.com. Now, I just wanted to tell you about my website. If you visit my website, you can get a lot of good deals direct from me. So get in the loop and visit UKOnlineTrainingCentre.com, where I'm going to be offering discounts and coupons, latest news and previews, live webinars and podcasts for 2017. So it's a really good way to directly get in touch with me and see the latest goings on all of the courses that I create. Now remember, I also create the monster training courses as well. So UK Online Training Centre is a combination of all of my courses all in one place, and I'm going to be offering loads of new features for 2017. So hopefully you check me out and see what's all going on in the world of UK online training.